What's up, everybody? Welcome into NFL Fantasy Live, presented by EA Sports Madden NFL 21. I'm Colleen Wolfe with Adam Rank and Marcus Grant, and you know what time it is. If you see these faces, it's fantasy football season, and I'm guessing if you win the NFL Fantasy Live Fantasy Football League, you get to host the shows, because I never got a trophy or a sticker or anything else, Rank, so I'm kind of still waiting for my prize.
Well, that's true. I do. First of all, I want to say welcome back to NFL Fantasy Live. We're thrilled to have you as part of the family once again. And you know what? Your name will be on the trophy. It's the one in the newsroom with my name all over it. So welcome aboard.
Well, it makes me feel better, though, that at least I got my name on it at least one time, right? Because otherwise Adam Rank would be even more insufferable on this show than he normally is.
All right, well, we're going to try and get you guys all set up so you can brag on all of your league mates. Let's take care of a little business here. If you haven't done so already, sign up at NFL.com/fantasy for your free, fully customizable fantasy league. All right, let's start with a little easy question here. In 10 or fewer words, Marcus, how can people win their leagues this year?
Draft at least one top-tier running back. That's 8, right? And maybe even 7, because top tier is hyphenated. Anyway, the point is, go out and get yourself a quality running back early, especially in a year where there isn't that much perceived depth at the position. I know a lot of people are talking about zero RB, but man, it just looks bleak if you let some of those top guys go by in the first couple rounds.
And I'm going to say draft guys who score a lot of points. And you know what? It seems simple enough, but some people get so locked into their draft board. If you find yourself with an opportunity to take, let's say, Travis Kelce or George Kittle in the second round, do it.
All right, I like it. Also, hit the waivers early and often. I feel like that is so many times the key in any of the leagues that I've been in, because people fall asleep sometimes a little early in the year. So every Monday here on the show, we're going to dig into a brand new mock draft. So it is time for our first mock draft Monday. All right, guys, Frank. Christian McCaffrey was the first off the board, and that's obviously no surprise. He is the consensus #1 overall pick among experts. But why should he go in that spot?
You know, it exactly goes back to that point of drafting players who score a lot of points. And obviously, he's probably not going to duplicate what he did last season. And to me, it's a lot like, you know, I streamed Parks and Recs over the last couple of months. And the first time you see it, it's great. And it's never going to be the same. But it's still pretty great on second rewatch. So the same is going to happen with Christian McCaffrey. And the reason we really love him is that, #1, he never gets game scripted out. The team's winning, he runs the ball. They're losing, they throw it to him. This is the perfect player to have. Don't overdraft him. Make sure you select Christian McCaffrey with the first overall pick.
Yep, a go-to guy for Teddy Bridgewater. He's worth every penny of that new deal and a top spot in fantasy. Okay, then Saquon, he went second. At #3, our first wide receiver came off the board, Michael Thomas. Marcus, is that way too early for him? I know he is consistent, but listen, in this time and age, I mean, wouldn't you go a running back there?
Well, you know, look, I think Madonna once said, we are living in a PPR world and I am a PPR girl. Something like that. I may have that a little bit wrong. Look, here's the point. Michael Thomas, you talk about the consistency, right? Every year of his career, he's had 120 or more targets. He's had 90 or more catches. He's scored 9 touchdowns in 3 of his first 4 seasons. The one year he didn't score 9, he still had 6 touchdowns. I know Emmanuel Sanders is there, but I don't expect this to cut into his target share. It's just because of the way the game is now, it's hard to ignore a guy who produces so much in that Saints passing game.
Yeah, he's a safe option. He'll definitely get you points for sure. 2 more backs then went after Thomas. Zeke at 4, Kamara at 5, and then at 6, Dalvin Cook, a few spots earlier than he's been going in a lot of the NFL.com mocks. Is that too early, Rank?
I would probably pass on Dalvin Cook at that spot. We loved him when he was coming out of Florida State. He's a great talent, but one of the things that has hampered him over the course of his career is injuries. And last year he played in, 13, 14 games, but over the last couple of games, starting in week 11, he averaged about 10 fantasy points per game. He was the RB 25 over that stretch. And even now, during training camp, they're still trying to limit him a little bit, which leads me to believe we're going to see more Alexander Mattison this season. So while we love the talent, he's a good player. I think if you're at number 6, you go in a different direction. You try to find somebody with a little bit more upside.
Okay, so, I mean, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw an uptick in his targets in the passing game, but listen, maybe wait on him a little bit, maybe pump the brakes there. Marcus, you took Davante Adams at 7, but then Tyreek Hill was the 3rd wide receiver ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, ahead of Julio. So would you have taken Tyreek if Davante Adams wasn't there?
No, I don't think so. I was a little bit surprised to see him there. But look, I can understand the logic behind it, right? You're talking about taking one of the primary targets on the most productive offense in the National Football League. You look over the last 3 seasons, Tyreek has averaged about 5 catches, 81 yards per game. He's had 27 total touchdowns. And the fact is, the floor seems to be pretty safe week to week with Tyreek Hill. The ceiling is incredibly high. Like I said, I don't know that I would have gone with him over, say, Nuke Hopkins or Julio Jones, but I can at least understand the thought process.
His speed in that offense, I mean, he has a monster ceiling there, Marcus. So after Hill, I took Derrick Henry because he comes through in the playoffs. Also, you know, the rushing title doesn't hurt. And then Rank, you ended round 1 with a bang. Clyde Edwards-Hillaire, a rookie in the 1st round. Did you wrestle with that decision at all? It feels like it's a little bit of a swing, but what do you think?
Not even a second. I didn't hesitate for a moment. I was so elated to get him in that spot. And going back to the conversation we were having about Dalvin Cook, this is the player I would have drafted at number 6. And I know a lot of people are apprehensive about rookies. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that Chiefs offense, but when you watch what he did at LSU and you listen to what Andy Reid said about him coming into the draft, where a coach or a scout told him to look at the tape because he reminded him of Brian Westbrook, Andy Reid said, no, he's better than Brian Westbrook. And I'm old enough to remember when we drafted Brian Westbrook. I know he's an Eagle. I'm so sorry. But here's the thing. I love taking him in that spot, and I backed it up with Josh Jacobs. I think that was the best move of the draft.
Listen, I mean, he is such a good fit in that offense, and Andy Reid, he loves pass-catching backs. So I feel like once Damian Williams opted out, he has no real competition for touches there. This is a great pick. I also love it. It is our first positional breakdown of the preseason. Cue the air horns, please. So, of course, we're going to start with the quarterback. There they are. Okay. Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, obviously the top of the list. But who goes first and when, Marcus?
I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson here because, well, why not? I mean, we're talking about the reigning league MVP, the guy who was the top among fantasy quarterbacks last season. Let's sort of break down how he gets it done, right? Imagine having the QB 12 when it comes to passing statistics, right? Just slightly better than Jared Goff. And then imagine having the running back 26 when it just comes to rushing stats, just ahead of Latavius Murray. And then when their powers combine in one player, you get Lamar Jackson. He's like Captain Planet, but far less annoying. I mean, why wouldn't you make this guy the first quarterback off the board?
Oh, I don't know, Marcus, because of regression. You're the one who shows up with the dessert tray, and you're like, hey, look at these great desserts, not telling me it's going to be 3,000 calories. This is why I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. The one thing that I love about him is he was so great last year, and you see right there, he's a QB7. He missed a couple of games with injuries, and now I feel like once he's had the weight of not having to worry about winning a Super Bowl, he can go full YOLO. They're playing with house money at this point. I really do believe that we have not seen the best of Patrick Mahomes yet, and we're going to see it this season. This is why he should be the first quarterback off the board.
Wow. Listen, you can't go wrong with either quarterback, but then you sort of have the next tier of the top quarterbacks. So, Marcus, who starts that tier?
Well, for me, it's Dak Prescott. I mean, for all the hullabaloo about Lamar Jackson, understandably, Dak slid in there as the QB2 and had arguably the best season of his career. He had 10 games with 20 or more fantasy points, 4 games with more than 25 fantasy points, and this is an offense that has become more Dak-centered over the last couple of seasons. They add CeeDee Lamb. They get an upgrade at tight end with the younger, more athletic Blake Jarwin. I expect that Dak Prescott, again, is going to be a top 2 or 3 quarterback, and there's certainly a chance maybe he quietly slides in there and takes over the number 1 spot this year.
I 100% agree with Marcus. I think that Dak is a great option. Russell Wilson's a great option. The quarterback I'm looking at, though, is Kyler Murray. And if you look at the trends over the last couple of seasons, obviously you've seen these quarterbacks make a huge leap in their second season, guys like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar, who we talked about. I think that Kyler Murray in this offense, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins, has an opportunity to be really special. The only difference is last year we were able to get Lamar in the 11th, 12th round. Kyler, the secret's already out on him. You're going to have to invest a little bit early, but I really do believe it's going to be worth the investment.
Offensive Rookie of the Year without DeAndre Hopkins. I cannot wait to see those two together. All right, let's get to some breakouts, though. Some potential sleepers. Whose arrow is pointing up, Frank?
You know, I really like Daniel Jones. I know a lot of people were upset. I should say Giants fans were upset when they selected him with the 6th overall pick. Baker Mayfield was even running his name into the ground. But you know what? When he took over in that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he showed that not only does he have a great arm, he's got some athleticism too. And I really do believe that the addition of Jason Garrett is going to be huge for him. And I know that everybody's going to make the memes of Jason Garrett clapping and doing all that stuff. But understand, when he took over as the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys years ago, Tony Romo had one of the best seasons of his career, throwing for 4,200 yards, 36 touchdowns. I'm not saying that Daniel Jones is going to get those numbers because especially the beginning of their season is very tough, those first 4 weeks. But week 5, this is somebody you need to pick up off the waiver wire because he's going to be a stud.
You know, I like Daniel Jones a lot. I'm going to stay in the division, though, and I'm going to go with Carson Wentz as my breakout sleeper, whichever one you want to call him. I mean, this is a guy that I feel like we've sort of forgotten about when we talk about quarterbacks, and a lot of it has just sort of been bad luck. He's had injury issues. Last year was basically wide receiver apocalypse by the time they got to the end of the season. I think they were running Greg Ward and then, like, the guys from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia out there at wide receiver. They've got talent there. If they can just keep everybody healthy, we've seen Carson Wentz be an MVP candidate, and I think he can do that again as long as they keep all their key players on the field.
Yep, they got Ertz and Goddard, Miles Sanders, a healthy Deshaun Jackson. I mean, I'm just saying, Carson Wentz is probably a good option. All right, finally, I don't like to use the B word a lot, but we got to cover potential quarterback busts here. So, rank, who is somebody on your list?
Matthew Stafford is a great quarterback. I don't want to take anything away from him, but I'm going to probably avoid him in fantasy this season. And the reason why is obviously he was amazing last year. He was on pace for MVP-like numbers. But I really do believe that head coach Matt Patricia wants this team to run the football. It is the reason they drafted DeAndre Swift. They're probably going to emulate the Patriots offense of the last couple of seasons where they're really more efficient passing the football and running the ball and trying to control games that way. So that's why I'm going to avoid Matthew Stafford this year.
I'm looking at Aaron Rodgers, and I feel like for years, just because of muscle memory, I think for a lot of fantasy people, we've always just kept him in that top tier of quarterbacks. I think that's slowly starting to change. You look back at last year, Rodgers had 10 games with fewer than 15 points. His season-long total was sort of bolstered up by a 43-point game against the Raiders in Week 7. On top of it, they didn't give him any help. We all thought they were going to give him a wide receiver. It didn't happen. And right now, I think at best, he's a fringe quarterback one.
That was Marcus,
okay,
not me, by the way.
Right, you can add him, everybody. 2 NFC North quarterbacks to potentially ghost for you guys out there at your draft. We're looking for a few picks from our experts mock draft here with some high upside. And Rank, I know there were a couple receivers that fell to you in the mock that you like.
Yeah, I drafted DK Metcalf, and this is one player that I've been targeting a lot in my drafts. It's always going to be a little bit difficult for the Seahawks because they don't throw the ball as much as we would love them to. He also has to deal with Tyler Lockett also being on the squad. But Metcalf is the kind of player that could have that second-year breakout like Chris Godwin did last season. I know everybody's focused in on Calvin Ridley, but for the price, give me DK Metcalf, and I wouldn't be surprised if he hits double-digit touchdowns this season. Another receiver I like as well is Henry Ruggs with the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a guy that harkens back to Raiders draft picks of the past where they really focused on speed. But if you really just feel that he's merely a speed merchant out there, you're not doing him a proper service. I really do believe that he's somebody who could break out this season, probably closer to the end of the year, but you're drafting him in the 13th round anyways, so you'll be pretty good.
Well, I'm going to go with Mike Williams down in Los Angeles with the Chargers here. And I feel like he's become a forgotten man. And I understand there are some worries about this Charger offense because of the change, especially at the quarterback position. But you're talking about a guy who's nearly risk-free because he's coming so late in drafts. Last year, he led the team in air yards. And we talk about regression. This is some positive regression. Progression, maybe? I don't know. He scored 2 touchdowns last year. You got to think that number's going to go up this year. Then there's Justin Jefferson, the rookie there in Minnesota. He is expected to land a role as the Vikings slot receiver this season. 94 targets vacated by Stephon Diggs when he left there to go to Buffalo. And over the last couple of seasons, Kirk Cousins has been pretty narrow in his focus. About 40% of his targets have gone to his top 2 receivers. We know Adam Thielen is going to get work. I think Justin Jefferson is primed to step in there and get a pretty large workload. And again, he's coming in the double-digit rounds.
Listen, I'm trying to get him in my keeper league. He was so good at LSU, and even if he just gets a little bit of that Stephon Diggs production, he'll be in great shape. And we are locking in on the rookie running backs here. Clyde Edwards-Hillaire, he jumped all the way into first-round territory after Damian Williams opted out. So, Marcus, what other first-year running backs are worth a look in fantasy?
Well, Deandre Swift is definitely near the top of that list. He sort of slots like the other guys, though, that he's going to be in a backfield where he's going to have to share some opportunities. In fact, he doesn't even know what his role is going to be in the Lions offense. But the upside is he does offer more pass-catching ability than a guy like Kerryon Johnson, which is important because the Lions could be playing from behind a lot this year. Starts the season as a solid RB3 option in fantasy with more upside if Johnson somehow can't fulfill his duties.
I'm going to go with Cam Akers, and this harkens back to what I said at the top of the show, where I want to draft players who are going to score a lot of points. And I know a lot of people are apprehensive about drafting Cam Akers because Sean McVay talked about having a backfield similar to what Kyle Shanahan has done in San Francisco. But the thing is, Akers is so much better than the other 2 running backs on this roster. He is going to end up getting the majority of the snaps, and to me, he is going to be a great steal in those middle rounds.
You know, when you already have Marlon Mack, moving up to draft Jonathan Taylor seems like something from the Department of Redundancy department, but the guy scored 50 rushing touchdowns in 3 seasons at Wisconsin. It's hard to ignore that sort of production. Look, they're going to split time back there, but I think Taylor's going to be the guy who gets to work down near the goal line in short yardage. That gives him some solid upside there.
I really like A.J. Dillon in drafts this season. And you know what? Don't take my word for it. Take it from the Packers organization. They had a running back last season who scored 19 touchdowns. Their response was to go out and draft A.J. Dillon early. That is why I am going to do the same. To me, he figures to be the Packers running back of the future. I expect him, by the time we get to the end of the season, Dillon is going to be the #1 running back in this season of the team, and you're going to be happy that you have him on your roster.
Well, he's definitely winning the quad competition on that roster for sure. I don't know. The quad competition, though, between A.J. Dillon and Saquon Barkley is very real, though. I mean, just saying, if that's any indication of potential success, he's probably on the right track.